All right, think about this for a second. Have you ever thought about moving for a new job? Maybe to a new city or even a whole new country. It feels like a deeply personal decision, doesn't it? Just about you and your career path. But what if I told you that very choice is connected to these massive, kind of invisible forces that are shaping the entire global economy? We're going to pull back the curtain and see how your personal choices are actually a small move in a giant global chess match.
So yeah, this is the big question we're going to tackle. It really does seem like a huge leap, right? Connecting your hunt for a new job to complicated international trade policy. But stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to see exactly how all those dots connect, from your front door all the way to the world stage.
So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, it's not in some fancy government building or on a chaotic trading floor. Nope, it starts with a single, very human decision: the choice to pack up and move.
Now, economists have a term for this. They call it voluntary migration. But really, all it means is that powerful, personal drive to find a better job, a better opportunity, a better life, and then making the choice to go out and get it.
And when that search for something better takes you across a national border, well, that's called external migration. It's basically a bet that the economy and your chances in it are going to be better somewhere else.
Which, of course, leads us to the next big question. When we say one country's economy is better than another, what does that actually mean? How in the world do we measure something that complex?
So how do we actually measure if one economy is better? Well, while there are a ton of different factors, economists usually rely on one key indicator to kind of take a country's economic temperature. And that indicator is called GDP per capita. Now, you've probably heard this term thrown around on the news, but what it's really trying to measure is the average economic slice of the pie for every single person in a country. It actually sounds a lot more complicated than it is. You just take everything a country produces in a year, that's its gross domestic product, or GDP, and you divide it by the number of people living there. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like the average annual income for every person in that country. At its heart, a higher GDP just means a country is more productive. It's making more stuff and providing more services. And what usually drives that productivity? Well, a lot of the time, it's technology. Better tools, better processes, they allow each worker to get more done, which grows the entire economic pie for everyone.
And you can see this in action when you look at developing economies. Their GDP per capita is usually somewhere in the middle, globally speaking. And what that tells us is that while, a lot of people might still be living in poverty, the country as a whole is on an upward swing, building its economy and moving towards a more prosperous future.
Okay, so it makes sense that every country wants to grow its economy. But that growth can feel really fragile, especially when you're facing tough competition from other countries. And that leads to this powerful impulse, the need to protect what you've built.
So when a country feels like its own local industries are being threatened by foreign competition, it might turn to something called protectionism. It's basically an economic strategy designed to put up a shield for homegrown businesses against all the pressures of the global market.
And governments have two main tools in their toolkit for this. First, you've got tariffs. These work like a tax, making imported goods more expensive for people to buy. Then you have quotas, which are even more direct. They're just a hard limit on how much of a certain product can even enter the country. Both are designed to make the local stuff look more attractive. But why would they do this? What's the driver? Well, it almost always boils down to one thing: jobs. Just imagine a situation like this one from the EU. A flood of cheap imports starts to pour in, and as a result, local workers start getting laid off. That is the exact moment a government might decide to step in with some tariffs or quotas.
Okay, we have all the pieces on the board now, right? We have the personal decision to move, we have the national way of measuring wealth, and we have this global game of protectionism. Now, let's finally connect all the dots and see the full picture. Let's just trace this ripple effect. It all starts with a global trend, something like an increase in imports from other countries. In response, a nation might put up tariffs to protect its own workers. That policy then directly impacts the national economy, which in turn completely changes the landscape of job opportunities for individuals. All of a sudden, some industries start shrinking while others might be booming.
And that is the connection. That deeply personal choice you make, to look for a new job, to maybe move to a new city, it's not happening in a bubble. It's a direct result of this massive, invisible web of global trade and national policy. The job market you're looking at right now is being shaped by forces that were set in motion thousands of miles away. And all of this leaves us with a final, really fascinating question to think about. This whole system, it's a super delicate balancing act. If every single country in the world puts its own interests first and throws up protectionist walls, what does that actually mean for global cooperation, for trade, and for the world economy as a whole? It's the central tension that really shapes our modern world.